Hello there, welcome to Dovers with Chinwekalu. It's great to be here and it's great to have you with us. It's good to know that Valentine is around the corner, despite the fact that we've had a really difficult time in the last couple of months, but we'll be celebrating Valentine anyway. However, let's talk about marriage today, where, we know that in Nigeria, for instance, marriage is very important to all of us. We make a lot of fuss around it. We spend a lot of money celebrating them. We do so much around it, and then we don't really pay attention to why they go wrong. And a lot of the time those marriages end up, in the dumps. Now, if it was a financial situation where the economy is suffering or businesses are suffering, somebody will do research to find out what's going on. However, because it's family, people just think people will work things out. But it doesn't quite work that way. We have to find out why is it that families crash? Why is it that families have problems, And that is what this show is about today. Why is it that those marriages that we celebrate that, make us so happy at the point of celebration eventually go wrong? What is it that causes the problems? Why? What can we do about those things? But more importantly, the cause, because if you don't know the cause, you never really know what to fix. And so this program today is going to be talking about those hot spots, those things that cause problems in families, why marriages pack up in the first place, what are the things that people do or people don't do that eventually cause the marriages to pack up. That's what today's show is all about, and I'm sure that you're going to be learning a whole lot from the things that we have to say. What you need to do is look out for those things before you get married, and when you do get married, when the issues arise, you know that they are possible issues and you know that you need to work wisely around them. Okay, so let's talk about the causes, why marriages go wrong. What is it that triggers off the trouble in marriages, and at the end of the day the marriages crash and they say things like, for irreconcilable differences we can no longer stay together. Okay, the problem with that phrase is the fact that these days we're hearing that phrase much more often than we used to in the times past. And we're not even just hearing them after a few years, we're hearing them even after 15 years, 20 years. Couples just said, it's okay, we're not doing this anymore. What is it that causes these problems? We need to talk about them, okay? So the first one I would think about is that people get married in the first place for all the wrong reasons. And that is critical. Some people think time is against, especially the girls, Nigerian, African girls, they think time is against us. My biological clock, quote and unquote, is ticking. Okay, that is not a reason to get married, because when you get married to the wrong person, ultimately you have a problem. Another thought is that some people think is the next thing I should do. A young man has gone through school, he's gotten his first job, he's gotten his first car, gotten his first house. He thinks, what the next thing to do is to get married. Meanwhile, he might not necessarily be emotionally and psychologically ready to be married. Or a young girl has gone through school, has a first job, has a lot of savings, is asking herself, should I live as I earn because I'm supposed to be getting married? And then next thing she thinks, next thing to do is get married. It doesn't always work that way, okay? The time to get married is when you meet the right person, and not your age or all those things that you have put in place that make marriage comfortable. No, that's not the time. So that is not a reason to get married. Or you think he or she has money. Oh, I want to be a part of that action. So you quickly attach yourself to this person because you think there's a lot of comfort you could get from that. You'll discover that comfort is not everything when it comes to marriage, okay? Or you get pregnant. That's a very common one. You get pregnant and you feel compelled to get married. Now, much as, it is good for, a man and a woman who have a child to be together, to look after that child, it's not always the best combination. And sometimes, despite being pregnant and, thinking is the wise thing to do, it might not really necessarily be the best thing to do in a situation. You have to be compatible, you have to be for each other, you have to really love each other for you to get married, not because you got pregnant, all right? Or you're under pressure from family. In our side of the world, the pressure is real. The pressure is real. Mommy makes a comment at you every time she goes to a wedding. Daddy makes a comment. All the aunties, especially from women, the aunties are constant. When you get to a wedding, they say, the next wedding is your own. I say, and then I say, all that puts a lot of pressure on you. And then there are even societal pressures. People disrespect you simply because you're not married. All kinds of little nuances here and there against the woman who is not married. And if you are not psychologically strong, you find out that that pressure is enough to make you decide, I'm going to marry the next person. And that next person you could be married could be the devil's son. So I need us to understand that the pressures from family are not enough reason for us to get married. And if you allow all these pressures to all these things to put you under pressure, and you decide to get married, you find out that when the pressures of life and the pressures that come with marriage come, your marriage is not equipped to handle them. Some people say our families know each other. So you grew up knowing each other. The guy and the girl lived as neighbors. They played together in the playground as children. They grew up as children. And because of that, the families know each other. I trust my friend's daughter. I trust my friend's son. And then you decide that they should come together. None of these reasons will stand the test of time. When life hits, these types of marriages just don't have what it takes to stand. You all need to know that, so that at the end of the day, you make your decisions for the right reasons. These reasons I've given right now are not the reasons for any couple to decide to get married. So another, reason that people have problems in marriage and, they tend not to agree is because couples don't have a common vision for their relationship, for their marriage relationship. It's one thing for you to date and be boyfriend and girlfriend, another thing for you to be married. And so there has to be vision. Okay, the two people have to have personal visions that agree. And if those visions don't meet, then there's a problem. Now, visions not meeting could just be a function of the fact that they don't communicate. They haven't been able to communicate each other's expectations to each other. However, it could also be because people are insincere towards one another. For instance, when you have a girl who feels it's my time, I need to do this quickly, or I want to do this before I'm 30, okay? Or I want to have children. She doesn't want to have children outside of marriage, so she needs the authentication of a name, Mrs. Somebody, to get married, to have children. And then she now gets married with that at the back of her mind. Her sole intention is to have children within a marriage setting. Meanwhile, here's a guy who thinks, I've met the love of my life and I want to get married. You know that their visions are not aligning. And so when that vision doesn't align and she has her 2 children and things happen, what happens is that she's done what she came to do and she will gladly say, I'm no more here, because she's had her children. Now, what did she want to achieve? She wanted to have children in marriage. So she has that. Meanwhile, the guy married her because he loves this girl, And so because that vision is not together, it becomes difficult to hold it together when problems arise. So poor communication or insincerity from, from one or the other part, or one party or the 2 parties. It could even be a situation where the guy feels it's time for me to get married. Let me just bring this young, lovely looking lady into my life. And the girl thinks, let me just have children, in a marriage setting. Those are 2 completely insincere reasons to get married. And when real life hits, that kind of combination cannot take the heat. All right. And so when the underlying issues have not been thoroughly thrashed, there could be others, then when trouble happens or when things happen, what happens is that they put too much pressure on the relationship. And then at the end of the day, they're not able to hold it together. But sincerity of purpose must be key. Agreement in vision must be key. And you must talk through these things. You must decide to agree. Because 2 people raised in 2 different families for many years until they came together, they have different, understandings and perspectives of life. So when you come together, to get yourself on the same page, you need to communicate, and communicate widely. Talk about everything and anything that could cause a problem or that could cause misunderstanding. Discuss these things in detail. Discuss them again and again. Now, am I saying that this makes the marriage foolproof? Not necessarily, because life can throw things at you that you've never discussed, things that you never thought could come up. And when those things come up, you now realize that you haven't had communication before on these matters, and that could cause a different problem. However, a couple that has the habit of discussing and communicating issues as they affect their relationship, find time to discuss these issues and discuss them, thrashing them out properly. Such couples are likely to be able to communicate when unexpected issues arise and solve and work their way through those issues as they arise. So, to avoid a situation where there's insincerity, there should be a lot of communication. You can pick insincerity when you're talking, but if you're not talking, you can't pick it. And when that happens, it's just a matter of time. That marriage will crack under pressure. I think that there are some particular hot spots that I'd like to talk about, and one of them is money. Money is critical for marriage. I mean, you shouldn't really contract marriages without being sure of how money is going to work in marriages. Now, the thing about money is that people have different attitudes towards money. Some people have a do or die attitude towards it, and other people don't. However, as important as money is, it's a tool for marriage. It's not the reason for marriage, and it's not the reason for being. It's just a tool, something you use to buy groceries, to do the things you want to do as a family. And so once you understand that, then there's really no need for us to have a do or die affair or a do or die attitude towards money. However, even with a good attitude towards money, it must be discussed. People have different money lives, all right? Some people are more savers, some people are more spenders, some people like the good life, some people feel the good life is not worth it. I mean, there's so many attitudes that people have to money that could cause a problem. The kind of schools children go to is enough to cause a problem. And the only reason it causes a problem is because there's a monetary value to it. Some people think all the highest end schools are the places that you get the best from. Other people think it doesn't have to be that high end. It can be on this or that end and you still get value. And that is enough to cause a problem. And the only real reason is the money. So we must discuss money. We must agree on how money works for us as a family. Who works and who doesn't work. It should be discussed. It shouldn't be assumed. Okay, your mother didn't work. The man can say, my mom didn't work and she looked after all of us. Meanwhile, the girl's mother worked. So in her situation, I will work. And the husband says, no, my mom didn't work. You know, that is enough to cause a problem. Just what kind of schools your children will attend. Some person might say, I like the expensive one. Somebody will say, I don't like the too expensive one. And that's already a problem. So let us have conversations around these things. Because once the conversations are held, then you can make decisions based on them. And then at the end of the day, it becomes something that you can work with. So who buys what? How do you manage money? Where do you keep the money? How do you save the money? Do you tithe or don't you tithe? Do you different conversations around money? What kind of givers are we going to be? These are conversations you must have when it comes to money, so that at the end of the day, even as little as far as asking yourself, when it comes to our relatives, how do we spend money with our relatives? That also matters. And so that brings me to the next hot spot, how we manage our family members, in-laws. Okay, how do we deal and relate with our family members? We call them in-laws, but your in-law is actually your husband or your wife's mother or father or sister or brother. So when you talk in-law, it looks like somebody who is far away from you, but in-laws are loved ones. They are family members, people we grew up with, people who my parents raised me. Okay, and so we cannot treat them as if they are the plague because we are trying to create our own family. No. However, there must be some kind of balance point. There must be that place where we find balance. And that place of balance is the place where your spouse now becomes priority. Before now, if you wanted to make a decision, you could ask your mom, your dad, before you made a decision. But now you should discuss first and foremost with your spouse. Give that spouse priority before you start talking about family members. All right. And once you do that, especially for the men with their wives, women have been kind of, our minds are formed in a way. We grow up thinking we capitulate to our husbands. But the other way around is where we have the challenge, where men are not sure how to manage this. And so we're not saying throw away your family members. We're just saying prioritize your spouses. Husbands, prioritize your wives. Wives, prioritize your husbands. So you might even have a twin sister. You were born the same day. You were just born 2 seconds apart, 5 seconds apart. Okay, and you've done everything together all this while. So she wants to go out. She comes into your room. She takes something. She walks away. Once is a third party who is now a spouse involved, the dynamics have to change, and the dynamics must place the couple above the outsider. So if it is me, if I'm married, I must place my spouse above everything else. All right. And I must make it clear to my family members that that is the way it is. So they begin to learn to prioritize my spouse above themselves. If you do not make that clear to family members, it becomes difficult to manage it. And so it's important that we put these two things in proper perspective in our lives, money and in-laws. If you can get money right and get in-laws right, even in points of disagreement, let's have a defining sentence or a defining way of dealing with things. For in-laws, for family members, prioritize your spouse. For money, discuss it. Discuss it like two intelligent adults, come up with the pros and the cons, and then make a decision. and you'll find that it will be a lot easier. However, money and in-laws, those are the two major causes that people have problems in marriage, especially in our climate. Why our climate? Our climate is very needy. There are lots of people who have lots of needs, and many people don't have enough to do everything they would like to do. So money always comes up as an issue. Family members always come up as an issue. It can also be financial, really. So we need to watch those two closely. We need to discuss them properly so that they do not become issues later on. All right? I think I've said a lot already, and I'm hoping that it's blessing you as we're talking about it if you're already in marriage or you're thinking of getting married. One last one that I'd like to talk about here before we go, and that is that life just happens. Okay, sometimes it's just really about couples trying to cope with life. A man and his wife having children that they need to take care of. The man goes to work, the woman goes to work, and before you know what's happening, they are gradually drifting apart, trying to cope with being married and do the things that marriage requires. Okay, that can happen to a couple. They just find out that they are drifting apart, and that's it. And before you know what's happening, it's like we're no longer connecting. That is very sad, but it's very possible. Life can also happen in other ways. For instance, illness could hit, illness could hit, or career issues, career problems. Something happens at the office, and your husband, who was doing so well at work, suddenly comes home and tells you, I no longer have a job. To change his job to get another job, you assume it can happen in a year, in a few weeks, a few months. And it doesn't happen for a long time. That is possible, and it has its pressures. It has its pressures. It could be illness, the lady has to go through a bout of cancer, and she could survive it she survives at the end of the day, but that whole period when she has to go for surgeries, for tests, for chemotherapy, for things, it puts a lot of pressure on the marriage. And sometimes that pressure, some families don't survive it. It could be the loss of a child. That is critical. That is so traumatizing. And just the trauma of it can shake a couple out of marriage. They can. So it can be anything, but it's really about the way either the guy or the girl, deals with that thing that has hit them. And maybe because the man is not able to cope with the fact that he doesn't have a job anymore. Just that he can't pay the bills is enough to traumatize him to the point where he becomes impossible to live with. That is something to deal with. Or a girl who had breast cancer and had to have her breast cut off. That is something to deal with, So there's so many ramifications of life hitting you and how people respond to life's issues when they hit. That makes it difficult for people to begin to continue to live together. And that now puts pressure on the relationship and on the marriage. And before you know what's happening, they cannot agree with each other anymore. They cannot talk to each other anymore. They cannot just relate with each other anymore. And that's it. And so why do we talk about these things at the end of the day? We talk about them because we want people to be aware of the things that cause problems, so that when you see them coming, you recognize that these are the things that cause problems, and you rearrange yourself to respond appropriately so that it doesn't crack your marriage. If you don't respond well once, and you don't respond well twice, and you do it again the third time, after some time, that marriage begins to be shaky. These are critical things, and if we just understand, we haven't even gone into such things as infidelity and all the other things that can happen in a marriage, all right? We've just talked about the very basic things, but there could be more serious things, and we all need to have that attitude of being on our guard, when it comes to our families, so that when these things are coming at us, we recognize where they could take us, and because you know where they can take you, you adjust yourself in your response, and that's all we're asking for at this point. Okay, adjusting yourself and responding properly when these things happen. Because if you don't, what happens that the marriage continues to take a hit. It's like a wall when you just keep banging, you keep hitting a wall with a hammer, you just keep hitting it and you keep hitting it. One day that wall will crack. And that's the way marriage works. You can't keep hitting it with these things and expect that it will not crack. You have to stop somewhere and ask yourself pertinent questions and make decisions that augur well for your relationship. That way you can survive the things that life throws at you and the things that, happen in marriage. We've talked extensively, and I'm sure the word of God says, the wise, if you are wise and you hear what we're saying, you will adjust yourself, listen and take in what you need to take in and respond properly. Okay, so we've had an extensive conversation as to what are those things to look out for. And I talked about the fact that, you can marry for the wrong reasons. Don't get married because you think your time is running out. Don't get married because you think it's time. That's not a reason to get married. Don't get married because your parents are putting pressure on you. That's not a reason to get married. So those things that make us make the wrong decisions that we make, for getting married can affect you. So don't make those decisions, okay? We talked about the fact that couples must have the same vision for marriage. If you are not on the same page for getting married, you will not be able to stay on the same page when you get married. And when life hits, you won't be able to stay married. We also talked about some real hotspots: money and in-laws, our family members. How do we manage money? How do we deal with money? How do we make decisions concerning around money? And secondly, our family members. How do we manage our family members such that we prioritize one another before our family members? Very critical. And lastly, that life happens. Life meaning anything and everything that can happen to you that puts pressure on your relationship to make it, to wobble it, to create a lot of trouble for you and make that relationship uncomfortable. So if we just start with these, when the bigger things come, if they come, you'll still be able to manage them. And perhaps you're already in that place where you're already having trouble. I want to introduce you to Mr. Fix-It. He does it right all the time. And if you have Jesus in your life, am I saying that Jesus in your life means that you can never have a divorce or your marriage can never break up? Absolutely not. So don't get me wrong. But when you have him in your life and you walk with him, he can help you through your marital issues. And that's why we ask you to call him into your life to be your Lord and Savior. Tell him to come in. Recognize the fact that you can't really do this on your own, and he will help you. That's who he is. He helps. He's the ultimate helper. He's the ultimate friend. He's the one who stays close and gives us the wisdom to do what needs to get done. What we need in marriage is commitment. Commitment to what we have decided, And once that commitment is there, you find out that you are able to make those decisions at the right time. If you're not committed for whatever reason, you either feel marriage is something you do. If it doesn't work, you walk away. That's a lack of commitment. Some things will happen and you will walk away. But there has to be this commitment that you keep bringing yourselves to and keep recommitting yourself to each other, for you to stay in marriage. So let's commit. Let's commit. That's the most critical thing. Let's commit and stay committed and keep being committed and keep recommitting ourselves over and over again through the span of our lives. Because when you miss it at 5 years, it can hit you at 10 years. It can hit you at 15 years. I've seen people after 20 years who decide that it's over. So let's keep recommitting to ensure that our marriages stay strong. Our commitment is to help you to keep your marriage strong on Advice with Chinwe Kalu. That's all we're committed to help you in one way or the other, in the things that we say to you to keep your marriage strong. So it's been great being here today. Thank you so much for being with me. As usual, it's my high point and I always love being with you. And I'm hoping that the things that we have shared with you today will be a blessing to you and will help you in your marriage. Meanwhile, our conversations are still on. You can join us on all our social media channels, on Instagram, Advice with Chinwe, on Advice, on Twitter, Advice, on Facebook, Advice with Chinwe Kalu. Just join us and join our conversations as we keep talking about how to make our families stronger and stronger. Where our website is also very active at this time. So just get on advicewithchinwekalu.org.ng, and there's so much material that can help you and bless you as you connect with us. Thank you once again for being with us. I'll be here same time next week. God bless you and bye-bye.